You wake up. The radio is already on, low, reading out the morning weather. Clear skies in your city. And then, a frost warning at Shackleton Base, on the moon. You don't even flinch. Everyone gets the lunar forecast. There's a base up there, and people you went to school with work on it. Above your bed, there's a poster. Not a band. Not an athlete. A woman in a spacesuit, planting a flag in red soil. The first human to walk on Mars. And her name is on every kid's wall. On the fridge, between the grocery list and a birthday card, there's a ticket. Low Earth orbit. Window seat. Departure next month. It cost about what a long flight used to. The morning news isn't about a war. It's a live shot from a factory. In orbit. Where they grow crystals you simply can't make down here. This is still America. Still 2026. But it's an America that never stopped reaching up. And almost everything bright about this world comes down to one cold morning that went right. Because in our world, that same morning went very, very wrong. January 28th, 1986. A space shuttle named Challenger sits on the launch pad in record cold. 7 people are strapped inside. One of them is a school teacher. In our world, the cold stiffens a rubber seal in one of the rockets. 73 seconds after liftoff, the whole thing comes apart in the sky. The country is watching live. So many of them are children. The 7 are lost. And something else dies with them. The country's nerve. For 32 months, no American flies to space. The dream of routine spaceflight is quietly shelved and never fully comes back. But here, it's a few degrees warmer on the pad. Or the launch simply waits one more day. And the seal holds. Challenger climbs. The boosters drop away clean. It reaches orbit, does its work, and glides home to a desert runway with all 7 alive. The school teacher, Krista McAuliffe, teaches 2 lessons from space to millions of kids on live television. Exactly as it was planned. Nothing explodes. There is no national trauma, no long freeze, no loss of faith. The machine simply works, and the country keeps its eyes on the sky. It sounds small. A seal that held instead of failing. But that one morning is the hinge the whole future turns on. And from that single launch that went right, the entire next 40 years bend upward instead of inward. The shuttles keep flying, and flying often. Not a few times a year, but a few times a month. Spaceflight becomes less of a moonshot and more like a railway. The space station everyone planned actually gets built. Full size, on time, a real outpost. Not the trimmed-down compromise we ended up with. And because a teacher came home from orbit a hero, the program that sent her is only the start. Astronauts teach class from space every single year. And a whole generation of kids decides that's the job they want. They grow up and become engineers, by the millions. The country that almost lost its nerve instead gets the largest wave of scientists in its history, and the money follows them up. The cost of lifting a kilogram to orbit falls and falls, until space stops being a place you visit, and starts being a place you build. By the end of the 1990s, there are people living on the moon. Not visiting. Living. A permanent base at the lunar South Pole, where the ice is. They mine that ice for water and fuel. They pull a rare kind of helium out of the lunar dust, a fuel our world only ever drew on whiteboards. The moon stops being the place a few men walked once in the 1960s and never returned. Here, there's a postcode up there, and the night sky looks different. If you know where to look, you can see the lights of the base. A tiny, steady human glow on the face of the moon. And then, right at the turn of the millennium, the thing our world only ever promised. A human being walks on Mars. The plans were real. Before the disaster, NASA's own engineers spoke of boots on Mars by the early 2000s. In our timeline, that died on a cold January morning. Here, it didn't. The first person to stand on another planet is the kind of famous that lasts for centuries. Her face is the one on the poster above your bed. The kids who watched a teacher teach from orbit in 1986 are the ones who fly to Mars in 2001. From that held seal to that red horizon, it's one unbroken line. For this world, the year 2000 isn't just a date that came and went. It's the year the human story stopped being the story of a single planet, and the culture of the whole world tilts upward to match. The biggest heroes here aren't only the singers and the athletes. They're the people who go up. Children's shows are set on orbiting stations. The bedtime question isn't only, what do you want to be? It's which world do you want to work on? The music, the films, the stories everyone grows up with are full of a future that feels close enough to touch. Because for these kids, it is. It's an optimism your world had for a moment in the 1960s, and then quietly lost. Here, it never got switched off. The money tells the story too. Fortunes that our world poured into other things flow upward instead. Into rockets, into stations, into factories that float. Up there, in perfect vacuum and zero gravity, they make things you cannot make on the ground. Flawless crystals, exotic alloys, medicines grown in weightlessness. Giant mirrors in orbit beam clean solar power down to the planet, day and night. The energy that runs this world is cheap, and it falls from the sky. Your phone might be a little clunkier than the one in your pocket right now, but there's a working elevator being built into the sky, and nobody here thinks that's strange. And the rivalry between the great powers cools in a strange place. Not in a war, but in orbit, where it turns out cheaper to build the future together than apart. The space race quietly becomes a space partnership. The moon base flies more than one flag. Mars is reached by a crew that doesn't all speak the same language. There's no neat leader of the free world standing over everyone. There's a planet that, for once, is mostly looking in the same direction. Up. It isn't a perfect world. People still argue, still struggle, still fall short. But its ceiling is so much higher than yours, and it never once stopped climbing. And now you're back in your room. The Mars hero on the wall. The orbital ticket on the fridge. The forecast for a base on the moon, read out like it's nothing. Now you know why. One cold morning in 1986. One rubber seal that held instead of failing. 7 people who came home instead of falling out of the sky. In our world, that seal failed. And the future everyone was promised. The moon base, the Mars landing, the century that kept reaching up, fell 73 seconds after liftoff, and we never fully picked it back up. So here's the question. And this time, it's a harder one. Usually you're relieved to wake up back in your own world. But this world is better than yours. How close did you come to living in it? Tell me in the comments. Would you rather wake up here or stay where you are? And I'll show you the next one.